What's up, Addicts? We're back. It's been a couple months since our speculation for Volume 13 of Danmachi, and now we're here with our review.
Yeah, and we're just going to dive right into it. So, Michael, do you want to talk? I mean, I'm pretty sure if you read the other one, you'll know what's going on in this, but just for people that maybe have forgotten or need a refresher.
Okay, so Volume 14 follows Volume 13, as does logic make sense. So, in the end of Volume 13, you have an encounter with the Juggernaut. You have the Juggernaut being injured, and Belle and Liu being trapped in the 37th floor.
Right.
So, at the same time, we do have the other members of the Familia, whether it be Aisha, Wealth, Mikado, Lily, Hirohime, Oka, and what is this, the lady that has one eye because she blocks it with her hair.
Chickasaw or whatever?
Yeah,
I don't know if that's
Chickasaw
right.
Indian. And we have
Close, I guess.
and then we have Cassandra and Daphne, and they are facing a boss as well as the prophecies coming to fold, which was a theme in Volume 13. And then we also have flashback scenes centered on Liu and her life before the first Juggernaut situation happened.
Which is pretty cool because we actually even got to see that scene play out, too, in the book.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to tell you how it ended. I think you should know.
Yeah, you know how it ends, but do you know how it ends?
Yeah. So there was a lot of good stuff about this book. So, Michael, do you want to say? I mean, there's probably going to be more good to bad, so that's probably going to be the meat of this review. But you can just
Talk about the good stuff?
Yeah, you can just say whatever you want.
Okay.
It's your
I usually
video.
do that.
We're not public or corporate chills. We don't get paid.
That's true. So, character. I think if I had to say two words that kind of encompass the book in general, it would be character development. So you have development of Lily, you have development of Cassandra. Really, it focuses about tying a lot of plot elements together. Not only does it have certain elements here, like, oh, well, how does that fit in the grander scheme of things? You get some of that interwoven through the prophecy, but you also have very touching moments between Liu and Belle throughout the whole narrative, where you get to see what them being alone in the dungeon has changed both of them, and how that'll affect the story in the future. That's kind of like the best non-spoiler way to put it.
Yeah, and I think that a lot of the developments they kind of coincide with improving some of the things that maybe I disliked, or some things that you could critique a little bit heavier on in the past books. So, like, for instance, like Michael was saying, with characters being better development, just using Lily as an example, seeing her kind of again fulfill that commander role and fleshing out her capabilities in that position, you can really see that I think it was, I don't remember exactly what it is. If you watch some of our other reviews, you'll know where I said it. But I said that one of the things that I found frustrating at times was that the author seems to forget some of the abilities that the characters have, and it's like, well, they could have used that in this scenario, right? And I think one of the cool things was that he takes one of the developments of a character, like I was just saying, Lily, and turns that into bringing that other element into place. So, like, for instance, throughout the book, Lily does kind of instruct the party to use certain skills that they don't even use very often or haven't used at all in a while. So I think that was cool to see. I guess another thing that I really liked was I guess going into like the character side was just seeing a lot of little snippets or Easter eggs or connections to the past books. I'm always a sucker for those because I think it does a really good job of making the story feel real, or like the characters feel real, because they have like those past connections with each other, and just showing that they remember what is done. It's kind of like the same premise if you watch like a show and like there was something done like 3 episodes ago, but none of the characters talk about it. So in this instance, they do talk about it, which is one thing I like. I have more if you want me to keep talking.
You can keep talking. I have one more that I really liked to talk about.
Okay, well, I'll let you say it.
Okay. So the action in this one, Josh talked about like utilizing skills. I think one of the things that we hadn't seen fully utilized that was really utilized well in the scene with the rest of the Familia is you have Mikado, being able to detect enemies, and I think that kind of previously you were like, oh well, how is that skill useful? But in this book, it was like vital in the survival of the Familia during an encounter. And I think just overall the action in the scenes in these, you have intelligent, probably the most intelligent enemies in regard to both the deep levels, Bell being on 37, and then just the other antagonists. So it was interesting to see monsters who not only are trying to kill you, but also can develop strategies to take advantage of circumstances.
Yeah, because there's definitely not a dull moment. Like you said, it's very action-packed. I would say the beginning is, it's very fast-paced. You're kind of left on the edge of your seat just because of how dire the circumstance is. But I really do love how, like, in the middle, even when the book starts to feel a little bit quote-unquote dragged on, I think it's actually a plus rather than a minus in this instance, because it's really just showing, like, not only how, like, ragged, like, these characters are in their circumstances, but just how dangerous the floor is, and, like, how terrifying going up against an opponent that you maybe haven't gone up against can be. There's even, like, this is minor, it's not really even a minor spoiler, it's just, you would suspect he's going to be fighting stuff, but one of the things that kind of illustrates that is when Bell is first down on the lower floor, one of the new monsters he goes up against, like, he's kind of, like, thrown off guard, and it's able to, like, slice off a bit of him, like, just a sliver of flesh, and it's actually eating it in front of him. So, like, just seeing, like, that darker tone and just seeing, like, how truly threatening they can be, I think it really adds to, those slower parts, because it's just like, oh crap,
Yeah, and this one is pretty dark. Like, in volume 12, 13, that kind of arc, it in many ways was showing, like, how dark humanity can be. And in this one, it was in many ways showing how savage, like, the deep levels of the dungeon is in general. And there definitely were, like, some moments where I was like, oh man, I can't put this book down. Like, I gotta figure out what happened, what's gonna happen to these characters, and how is it gonna work itself out. And they were like, that's something that, the book is good when it does that, especially sometimes, like in this book, it wasn't even just like, action scenes. I was like, oh man, the interaction, how is that gonna affect the future? How does she feel? How does he feel?
Yeah, because, like, I guess one of the things is that, I got 2 points to put off of that. One is that the book does a really good job, or I should say the author does a really good job of making sure there's no plot holes. He really goes back and has an explanation for, why characters have certain items, or, like, doing a good job of making a highlight in that scene of them doing a certain thing that's going to pay off for something they're going to do later in the book. So he does a really good job of, even when he doesn't show it, going back and, like, having a recollection of telling you exactly what happened. With Liu, and just, how you were talking, like, certain things, how this is going to affect the future, what does this mean for certain characters. I think Liu's definitely probably, like, the biggest highlight throughout the book, just because just seeing how well he not only, like, ended her arc in a way, coming full circle for that character, but also making her be a completely new character in a sense, or having a possibility of being somebody that we don't necessarily know, but it's her old self. I think that's really cool to see, just all of the little stuff. We kind of talk about this in a discussion that's coming out after this, where you kind of see me talk about it a little bit more, but just seeing, like, how the author, like, lays down all of those narrative things, or story threads for her character is really cool.
Yeah, coming into this arc, specifically talking about, Liu being accused of murder and there being a search for her, I was kind of wondering how that was going to tie into her general narrative, but I think he really did a great job in Volume 14, not only making that make sense as to why she's doing all those things, which you see most of in Volume 13, but also how it relates back to her character, and how, I'll just say this in a non-spoiler way, Liu talks about how there's, like, 3 events that change her life, and how one of those happens in Volume 14. I think that's meaningful for not only her character, but for Belle as well. And
I just love how, like, the author is able to convey, like, her change, not only through, like, the actions that you see her do, the kind of, like, symbolism and, like, the things that she's kind of going through or kind of forced to go up against in this, and then just seeing, the acceptance of it at the end. But I will say, even though there is a lot of positives, I do have 3 nitpicky, very, like, minute negatives, but I think it's fair since we're doing a review. and that is there is at times when there is a dire situation going on, or like whatever, like let's say it's either during a fight or like beginning of the fight, or it's just in a scenario that's, well, it's kind of hard to describe without spoilers, but like let's just say, for instance, like if a room happened to be disintegrating around you, that there is times like in the book where seemingly these people are just standing around in like a moment that you'd feel like every second could be life or death. So, and it's not very often. I think there's only like 2 or 3 times I recall like feeling that. And again, that's probably just because it's a book, and you can't really convey like the essence of time as well in like that close of an instant. But it is just something I noticed. The other thing too is like, when I think about this every time I laugh because just how much I've seen it in this series, but the author has one saying that he uses all the time. And I think it's funny because not only when he says it at least once in every book, he says it like at least 2 or 3 times back to back. And it's the Marinetta strings being cut reference, and it's just like at this point it's a meme, and so I kind of enjoy it. But it's still kind of like one of those things where like if I was to critique his writing at all, it would be maybe say something else, or like when you write it in there, make a note of where you put it so you can like go and put something
translators,
else
can we put something else in there?
Or yeah, maybe it's a translator thing, I don't know. But if I ever meet him in person and I'm gonna ask him, hey, can you put that in the book? Can you write that as like one of your notes to me? But the only other thing I'd say is, and this is kind of like a subjective one, so take this lightly with the one I say, but I feel like a lot of when you're looking at the present day, like what's actually going on the 37th floor, and we're focusing on Belle and Liu in terms of the grander scheme of things, of like fighting, or like, let's say, what a character, like there's like, one character thinks, they're getting their way, but then they don't realize, or at least they seem blind to the fact of what the character would do and what all the readers would do. I feel like those instances are a bit predictable, and that's the only part that, to me, it's like, I know where this is going, so at this point it's just for the ride, right? Which the ride isn't amazing, but like, I don't know if you felt that, but to me, like, there was a couple things, like, especially like when you eventually, like, I don't think it's a spoiler, but like eventually when they go up against the Juggernaut again, it's like, okay, I know how this is going to go down, right? But, it's just seeing it. I don't know if that's necessarily a thing for you, but to me, it kind of seemed like that.
The only really negative is sometimes I feel like the flashback scenes were... I think they were necessary, but I feel, just for me personally, I kind of was like, I want to get back to Belle, or I want to get back to the Familia part of things, which, I mean, obviously, it was important for Liu's character development, and it may have just been, like, the circumstances of wanting to finish and read the book in, like, a day and a half so we could get a review out. So maybe when I go back and read it again, I'll more appreciate that, but that was kind of, like, the only negative, and there was... but like as far as being predictable, I think this book wasn't very predictable in some ways. Like you knew that things were going to happen, but you don't know how they were going to happen. So like I made some prediction, like in my mind, I was like, okay, so now this is going to happen. I was like, no, I mean it kind of did, but it was completely different to what I was expecting.
Yeah, like I was just mean like in a broader sense, not so much like the
all right, it's time.
The details, right?
What is your rating, Josh? I can go first if you would like me to.
No, I think this one deserves it. So I'm going to go ahead and give it to it. This one, it's a 10 out of 10. It's a pure ecstasy. I really love this one. This is probably, to be honest, I can't even really tell you which one, if it's my favorite or not, because it's either my favorite or my second favorite. It's probably tied for my favorite because I really love book 10, and there is a lot of parallels between this book and book 10, and those are the reasons why I like it, but ultimately they focus on different things. With this one being the dungeon, that one being more like adventures and stuff. But it's just everything. I love it. Even though, like, I came up with those negatives, those are, like, pretty, like, I'm grasping for straws on negatives for this, man. Like, it's a really good read. The only thing that I could actually say I didn't like when I was reading was that how long it was taking me to finish it. That's literally the only thing that I walked away and was still a little bit mad it took me that long to read. But other than that, absolutely loved it. One of my favorites.
So for me,
not only for the series, but for books in general.
For books in general.
For books in general.
Take that.
Take that. Yeah.
Scarlet Letter. Anyway,
That's a great line. Continue with your rating. Does it get a Scarlet A?
Yeah. So this book was really good. I think I referenced it, I don't know in this video or another video because it kind of runs together, but I think this is probably the best well-written book that the author has done, and you could see he's improved and probably matured as a writer. So I would also give it a 10 out of 10. And not only would I recommend buying it, on Amazon virtually, but
ooh, yes, we didn't even show it. Here,
we haven't
perfect
shown
time
it
to show
yet.
it.
But it's Josh's, so I'm holding it. But
okay.
It's got great covers, and you can show them the pop out. It's got really good illustrations.
There's a couple in here, so let's see here. I have to pull it out this way, I think. It's backwards, even though it's here, do you mind holding that part?
Sure.
Yeah, so this is the chapter, which I don't know if you can see this because of the deal, but it's Harry, Hime, and Wilf, so, and then on the other side, it's got Liu, so that's pretty cool. It doesn't detach from the book, but it's still a cool thing to have the artwork in there. If you wanted to have the author sign it or something.
So yeah, no, it's definitely go out and support the book. It's really good material. It's all you expect it to be, and the illustrations are really great. So go ahead and buy it.
It's a thick boy. It's going to take you a while.
It'll take you a while, and treasure it because it may be 6 months to a year till the new one comes out in English. So
that's true, but just as a little insert here, we do have our discussion coming out right after this. It is fully talking spoilers. It's talking about the next volume and our speculation. So if you're missing that here, don't worry. We have another video, and it's a long one, so you'll probably like it.
Get some chips, eat dinner.
Yeah, put it on while you're cooking pasta.
Exactly.
Be Lido and just be oh yes, I'm good about Belici. Yeah, da. But sorry, that was a terrible joke.
I died a little inside.
But we also have the Liu side story 5th volume coming for the review. And then, we got news about another side story that you'll hear about in the other video and then other stuff. So, that'll be it.
So, yeah, remember Addicts, we got more Danmachi stuff, we got video game stuff, we got comic book stuff, top 10 list, maybe we'll get some movie stuff out as well. And we'll see you guys next time.
All right.
Peace. Addicts.